Hey everybody, Danielle Hargenrader here. Welcome to another episode of Unleash Your Inner Diabetes Dominator. And today I'm super excited to bring you Max, Mr. Divabetic, who is the founder and executive director of the National Diabetes Outreach Organization, Divabetic. He is also the host of the popular Diabetes Late Nite podcast show that combines diabetes education and empowerment with music from today's music stars. Max, thank you for taking the time to be with us today.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Oh, cool. All right, cool. So normally on Unleash Your Inner Diabetes Dominator, we talk about the person's diagnosis. But since you're my third awesome person that's heavily involved in the diabetes community that doesn't actually have diabetes himself, but as you said before we started, you said you are at risk, as we all are, even for type 2. You know, we don't eat healthy and we don't take care of our bodies. So as an honorary member of our diabetes community, because you've done so much for us, if you could kind of give us a little rundown on how you got so heavily involved in the diabetes community.
Sure, I'd love to. Well, my mother's mother was living with diabetes and died in the early 70s. And about 12 years ago, my older brother was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. But why I really got involved was because I worked for Luther Vandross for 13 years. And Luther was living with type 2 diabetes. He was diagnosed in the early 80s, probably right at the beginning of his career, like around 81, 82, when his first album came out. So I went on the road with him with the Never Let Me Go tour in the early 90s, and then I was hired on as this personal assistant. I knew Luther had diabetes, but it was nothing we ever talked about until, unfortunately, the day I went to do a routine check on one of his homes in New York and found my boss lying on the floor after having a stroke. So I was the one who rushed Luther to the hospital, and once we got into the hospital and into ER, I found out that Luther's stroke could have been prevented. And I was like, what do you mean it could be prevented? And they said, well, he wasn't managing his diabetes. So I always like to tell people right off the top, you know, my boss had about 50 to 80 people going on the road with him, helping him with his music. But when it came to managing his diabetes, he did alone. And honestly, I think that was a mistake. And that's why we're always urging people at Divabetic to have a healthy entourage and involve not only your doctors, but also your friends and your family in your care so they know what to do. Because I have a family history of diabetes, I was and I still am filled with a lot of regret and shame around not knowing more and being more empowered to have been able to be a bigger assist to him in that. And so that's, you know, really kind of got me wanting to do something, because I looked at Luther's fans who had been so loyal throughout his career, supporting him with the music, and I wanted to give back to them for allowing my life to change. I got to live out my dream and tour with one of my favorite music stars of all time. And so I decided to get involved in diabetes outreach, and I thought it would be more interesting to attack it from an entertainment standpoint. And so Pat LaBelle was up on stage, who was a good friend of Luther's, and she was performing at a tribute concert for Luther. And I looked up at stage and I thought, wow, you're not in the middle of the show, she stopped to mention that she was living with diabetes, which really kind of shocked me, because I had never heard someone speak so openly about it. And I thought, well, you're not a diabetic, you're a diva. And that's when the word divabetic popped into my head. And it really is the word diabetic with a V, which stands for Vandross, and it's about lifting your voice and creating awareness. And now over the last 10 years, it's kind of evolved into that entertaining brand of outreach. But I've always done that because I wanted to educate myself as well. So there's a little bit of selfishness involved in all of this. And because I read People magazine and Billboard and Rolling Stone more than I read Diabetes Self-Management or a health magazine, I thought, why can't we give it a little pop culture spin and make it a little bit more fun for people to learn about diabetes?
You just said so many things that I don't know if I'm going to even be able to remember to touch on all the things I wanted to say. But what you said about your entourage, your support group, I mean, I preach that constantly. You know, I'm such a big proponent of the diabetes online community. And even if you can't get online, finding local support groups or just looking at Meetup or anything, because having those people around you that can lift you up, or even just that can commiserate or make you feel better, you know, it's just like my whole life. I mean, for the first, I don't know, 20 years of having diabetes almost, I barely knew anyone else that had diabetes. It was just like that feeling of being alone, like Luther probably was feeling. It envelops you to a point where you feel like, okay, well, this is my burden. I don't want to burden anybody else with this. But the thing is that friends and family that love you, and they don't, you're not a burden to them. They want to help you. We have to be strong enough to reach out and ask for that help. And so I love that part of it. And the other part is that I think all great things that happen, Divabetic included, they stem from a selfish need to fulfill something for ourselves. The reason that I do what I do is because I wanted to be able to support other people, because I didn't have that when I was growing up, the internet and all this other stuff. It's like, you know, I was at a conference recently. I actually interviewed someone else who doesn't have diabetes, but she created the Friends for Life conference that goes on in Florida every year and is now going on for 16 years. But originally she created that so that she could hang out with other parents of children who had diabetes. She didn't know it was going to turn into this giant, you know, movement for people to, and just same thing for Divabetic. It's like the need that it was fulfilling for you also in turn is able to fulfill this need that so many other people have. So
well, I was really ashamed. I mean, I could almost cry thinking about how ashamed I felt when it happened. I mean, they were holding vigils for Luther around the country, and people were really wondering, why didn't you prevent this? Why didn't you stop this? And when I realized I had diabetes in my family and I could have been empowered to do something, I wanted to stand up and technically have my face slapped or someone tell me that was wrong, you're ashamed. And I thought, if, you know, I will talk about it in order to stop it from happening to someone else, because he did lose his personal dignity after having the stroke, and life became much more difficult. He was never able to return to stage. He always had a love and joy for performing. He loved to put on a big show, and the idea that diabetes robbed him from that just devastated me. And he really did change my life, and you know, Luther is still a part of my life in a big way, and I'm honored and thrilled to represent his legacy any way I can. But I often feel that people, you know, see the fruit, see the color, see the glamour and the fun we're doing at Divabetic, and they don't understand the seriousness of what was involved to get us to that point. So, you know, I don't mind talking about it, and selfishly, I don't mind being ashamed of it, because I think that motivates me to want to stop it from someone else. And I don't like to get into scare tactics, because I don't, that doesn't work for me when I'm learning. So to me, it's better to love yourself and keep yourself healthy than avoid even hearing about amputation, stroke, blindness, kidney failure. But if those things aren't working, then yes, I totally, you know, I don't mind going to the mat and telling people how awful it was and why it's so important right now to reach out, like you're saying, and we're both saying, to someone and really talk about it. Because you know, to find someone on the floor as someone who's not the person living with diabetes and not know what to do, I would almost believe is much harder than being the person on the floor. Yeah. Because you just feel so disempowered and so helpless in that moment. And yes, I have full function, but at the time, I was just lost in how can I help him? And this was my mentor, my idol. You know, this was someone who, you know, he was as close to me as a parent or a sibling or whatever, you know, someone, whoever's so special in your life, and to think that you can't help them is just awful.
Yeah, and I mean, I know what it's like to feel shame around certain things, and I hate to think that you're feeling shame. I mean, I know that it's part of being human, but I think that what you're doing now, you know, obviously is, you know, the fruits of that feeling, and it's helping so many other people kind of prevent that kind of thing from happening. So it's a wonderful thing. And you also have to think about, and this is what I always use, it's like you can, you know, the whole lead a horse to water but can't make them drink thing, is that even if you knew everything about diabetes management and you were the beacon of diabetes information, if he didn't want to implement that into his life, and you don't know what could have happened in the past, it may not have made any difference whatsoever. So I'm just a motivational kind of inspirational person, and I hate to think that somebody as awesome as you is sitting around feeling ashamed as for all the things that you are doing.
It's been 10 years, and I know I've come. It's settled in me, but it's still very close to my heart, and that is the big motivation for me. And it's not something. I think it probably sounds more negative than it is, but I just feel like a lot of times people perceive me one way, and I just, in the moment that you were asking me about it, reminded myself how serious, why I did get involved, and how serious it is, and how close it is to my heart still today.
Yeah, and so actually we just realized before we started here that we're local. So you put on a lot of events, and you have you have your podcast, which you certainly want to talk about that. But the live events, like when you first started doing live events, like what was that like? I mean, how did you get
from theater? I think, when I came up with the word divabetic, I knew divas. I didn't really know diabetes. So I would admit I'm very attention deficit in learning. And I thought when I went to an educational class, it was, A to Z. And you had to sit there through A to Z. And I was just kind of like, oh my goodness, are they ever going to get to stroke? That's an S, So I was so bored. I apologize to people who do it well, but I couldn't sit through traditional education. So I worked in theater prior to working for Luther Vandross. I have an extensive career in theater and live music, from Shakespeare to comedy, whatever, and I thought I could take that skill set to the stage. So actually, I always called it a show. I have a hard time using outreach and event and program. I've learned it over the years, but technically every time I do something, it's a show. And the idea when I first started with the national tour was just to make women, when you're divabetic, no one's thinking that you're going to put on a one-on-one basketball game for guys. So I created a program called Make Over Your Diabetes, which really combined the idea of having free makeover services with personalized education, because I felt when women were getting a makeover service, whether it was safe manicure, hairstyling, makeup application, or mini massage, like a chair massage, that was a boost of confidence that you kind of need to kind of take on something that you might not want to talk about. For a lot of people, it is diabetes, or it's diet, or it's like you're a personal trainer, it's how do you fit in fitness? And so I wanted to find a way to do that. And then from there, it just kind of evolved, because I was lucky enough to work with Novo Nordisk and travel around the country, specifically had the opportunity to return to a lot of the cities that I toured with Luther Vandross. That was one of my goals. And I just began developing a stage show that combined games and prizes and fun workouts and live music and entertainment. And that evolved into today, which it kind of morphed into the podcast as well, where I got a wonderful opportunity to work with Sony Music. I think music is so motivating for me when I move. So I love to play artists today. We just played Kelly Clarkson on our October Diabetes Late Night, focusing on food addiction, overeating and binge eating, because after she gave birth to her baby, everyone's been beating her up about gaining weight. And I thought this was a really wonderful opportunity to kind of center on that. Luther also had a really public battle with his weight over the years, and I really wanted to take on a serious topic. But I love to combine it with music, because I feel like after the show happens, every time you hear a Kelly Clarkson song, and ideally she has a lot of anthems from Stronger, and she has Miss Independence, and she now has a song called Invincible. I think those are like great ways to feel motivated and encouraged when no one's around you with inspiration. And I'm on the treadmill all the time listening to the artists we've had on the show, because it just helps. I don't know, it kind of makes me laugh, but music just has always motivated me to want to move.
I think that's very human for me too. I mean, without music is, I don't really know too many people that music doesn't affect. I mean, one of the things that I recommend for people to do if they're in a bad mood or they're trying to change their physiology is just literally go to YouTube, put on your favorite song and blast it as loud as you can, and just get up and dance around. It's like that physiologically changing your state, like getting up and moving and hearing that music, it changes your inner working. Like it literally changes your mood. So I totally agree. And without music to work out to, it's like if I forget my headphones and I go to work out, it's like I might as well just forget the whole thing, because it's that important for me, at least. And I think, you know, obviously for you as well. And I think that's a very across humanity, I think that's a very real uplifting thing. And yeah, you keep saying so many good things. That
I want to say, so like if you came to a Divabetic event, what I wanted is, and I didn't get to say this, you know, there's so much great traditional education going on that I don't feel like we as a boutique operation have to duplicate that. So if you come to a Divabetic event, it is like a stage show. It's friendlier education. It's hot topics. It's interactive and engaging. There's always in November, we're going to have a big fashion show. We always love to show different sizes and styles on the runway. I think it's so important to love yourself first in order to take care of your health. Absolutely. So we love to do that. And I'll be playing my games and doing all the Divabetic stuff with a lot of some crazy workouts. I've been creating new workouts for people. So
I think also what you said about, you know, getting pampered, you know, whether it is getting a makeover or getting a safe manicure or getting a little massage, I think that just the act of doing that, because I talk about self-love. I mean, I have videos on YouTube that I've made about the incredible importance of loving yourself and giving yourself what you deserve, because that's the only place you're really going to start, you know, giving yourself the proper nutrition and giving yourself the proper exercise. Those are gifts that we give ourselves when we love ourselves. And I think that the pampering, I think that's, I think most women will admittedly say that that's a wonderful thing, but some people say, oh, well, that's just not my thing. But it's like, that's a gift that you're giving yourself. You deserve to feel taken care of. You deserve to feel like you're more beautiful, or, you know, just more vibrant. And when you provide that as a service at an event where, you know, you are talking about serious things like healthcare and all that stuff, I'm actually, like I was saying, Max has an event coming up, and I just realized we're local. I'm going to it. I can't wait to go to it, because I just can't wait to be involved in something like that, because it's true. You're combining something pleasurable with something that may not be as pleasurable to talk about, which it just automatically opens up a channel inside of you. It's like a chi thing, you know, it's unblocking something so that you can kind of feel a little bit more free to talk about things that you may not want to. And I think that's genius. I really do.
And I loved it. I like the focus on that. So this November, we're talking about the emotional side of diabetes. I never stay away or am scared to talk about relationships or the intimacy issues. We've had a lot of best-selling romance authors on our show to kind of stimulate conversation around that topic, and then bring in experts on sex to talk about what's happening to your partner, whether it's a woman or a man, and what's happening to yourself around your desire, your sex drive, and your performance. And that's important to me as well. And I'm actually, in 2 weeks, I'm doing another podcast on cancer, diabetes, and going to the gynecologist. It's my second visit to the gynecologist. So there's no dumb questions when a man goes to a gynecologist. So I'll be asking all those questions for women as well with diabetes, because they keep finding more and more links to breast cancer and diabetes. And I want to talk a little bit about ovarian cancer and Go Pink. Because one time when I was doing the national tour, I was doing media, and they told me they couldn't have Divabetic on a TV show because it was October, and they were already focused on one woman's health movement, which was breast cancer. And I was so kind of like, what? You know, that I thought, wait a minute, I should kind of join the movement. And sure enough, I started to meet a lot of dual diagnosis divas out there who are living with more than one, living with diabetes as well as cancer, and I wanted to raise awareness for that. So it's like our third year or fourth year of doing that, and I'm always excited to shine the spotlight on different members of our.
Yeah, the more I talk to you, the more I realize we have in common, because I talk about the intricacies of sex and diabetes all the time. And actually, in my upcoming book, I have a section on sex and diabetes, what to expect, because nobody is talking about that. Doctors aren't telling people with diabetes what might happen or how to prepare for it. And I funny part of my book is I talk about, you know, nothing more sexy than, you know, you're in the throes of passion, your blood sugar drops so low that you're so confused that you don't know what's going on. And meanwhile, your partner, you know, thinks you're going to pass out. It's like, oh yeah, that's so attractive. But the thing is that people don't know to expect that that's going to happen. And I like to talk about it openly because the more you know, the safer you can be, the more prevention you can take, you know, have a juice box by the side of the bed, you know, that kind of stuff. I mean, people think it sounds silly, but it's a really important part of your life. You know, you have to be in the know. And I think that's
even down to the lubricants you use. They're not all the same for women with diabetes. You know, a lot of women have, I could say vaginal dryness. I've said it a million times on the show, but women experience vaginal dryness. They need to find a lubricant. They want to make sure certain lubricants will raise your blood sugars. I mean, it's a really interesting dynamic out there. And I'm so glad you're doing it as well, because I feel that's why I love social media. I love the idea that we can talk about these conversations. People could watch this video, or they could go to either one of our resources, your book, my website, and hear some of the podcasts on it, and have it be anonymous and be able to get that information so that the embarrassment factor is minimal, which I think is great.
Yeah. And so obviously, if you've been doing this for 10 years, there's a great reaction to it. Obviously, you must have a following to continually put on these events. So do you have like regulars, or like how, you know, like how does that work? People just,
I'm assuming regulars. That's kind of fun. We do. I'm so happy about that. I can get emails. It's unfortunate I can't go to every city that people want us to go to, but we've been in Philadelphia for the last 6 years, so we have a pretty large crowd that comes out for that. I also, you know, people join our Facebook pages, and there's a lot of listeners on the podcast. So there's an e-newsletter people could belong to at Divabetic. I just, you know, when you jump off into something you've never known before and begin another career doing that, it is a little scary. But I've been so thankful, and I have such great gratitude. I mean, because yesterday I did the Divabetic Club in Philadelphia, for all the people who come out and continually come back to our programs. And I also, you know, I only partner with qualified healthcare providers. I work with a lot of certified diabetes educators, registered nurses, and registered dietitians, as well as psychologists and social workers, to kind of put people in touch with the resources in their local community. That's really important to me. So I'm also thrilled that we have not only the community of men and women living with at-risk and affected by diabetes, but we also have the community of educators I work with to kind of inspire them to try different things and do, you know, new things like our numerology game around forming a game plan around your high and low blood sugars.
Oh, like nice. I like gamifying everything.
I think I should have been Bob Barker. Right? Maybe I am Barker.
I think actually gamifying things is a really important part of wanting to take care of yourself. That's why, you know, I have people track their food journals. It's like, I like to call it a plug and play. It's like, because I'll help people set it up and I'll give them the values that they need to get to. But I like to help people create a way where they can plug in the things that they're eating so they can try to reach these values. And it's not, you know, because it's an educational thing. I want you to learn as you go. So it's like, oh, I eat this and I'm here, and I eat this and I'm here. But I mean, that maybe not as fun, but I'm into the whole gamification of things, because I think that helps people stay engaged. And I think that's a really important way to kind of keep people on track to wanting to do the things to give themselves the gift of health along the way. So podcast. So I always say to everybody, I'm going to get Max's links for everything that he does, so that they're going to be posted directly below the YouTube video and also below the video on the blog. So, you know, don't worry. But so your podcast, does it run specific, just so people know, get an idea, maybe they're going to listen to it?
All our podcasts are free. They're on divabetic.org. They're on iTunes, and they're also on Blog Talk Radio. I broadcast live on the second Tuesday of every month from 6 to 7 p.m. Next month, we'll be spotlighting the music of the Isley Brothers. This month, like I said earlier, we spotlighted Kelly Clarkson. In addition, I sometimes do a second podcast in the month, which I'll be doing on October 27th. I'll be doing the Diabetes, Cancer, and the Gynecologist podcast from 6 to 7 on October 27th. But all of those are available on demand for free. The idea of that is really like Diabetes Late Night is really like a late night show. And I have the Charlie's Angels of Outreach, which are my 3 fabulous certified diabetes educator giving advice. My mom's even on the show with her Mother Your Diabetes tips. She always gets a friendly tip that's easy to do at the end of the show so people could walk away and feel there's something they could grasp right now to feel better about themselves. And then I usually have a spotlight diva or dude. I'm so grateful that Divabetic has kind of expanded from being women-centric, and now men could be a part of it. So I have a diva or dude who's living with at-risk or affected with diabetes on the show as well. Now, next month, I'm excited because Mark D'Agostino just authored the book, Ellie and Coach. And Mark actually was working at People magazine when he heard that I had stayed with Luther after the stroke, and he put me in People magazine 10 years ago. So it's going to be really fun to have Mark, reconnect with Mark, and thank him again for how he changed my life and gave us a really big boost at the beginning.
That's awesome. And I love that you have your mom on, because I do a lot of stuff with my mom as well. She's a big part of my team, and she's the reason why I am here today doing everything and being the strong person that I am. And she, like, when I go to speak, you know, I bring her with me. A lot of times I get to speak to groups of parents and children have just recently been diagnosed. And a lot of, you know, I think for parents, a lot of times it's even more scary than, because the kids are kids and they don't realize. But then my mom, I'll give my, you know, speech, but then my mom will stand up and say, look, you know, 25 years ago, we didn't have the internet, and, you know, and look at my daughter, you know, and she'll say more than that, but she basically, when they hear the mom saying everything's going to be okay, it really does add this kind of feeling of, all right, well, maybe things are really going to be okay, you know. And I love that you do that with your mom, because I do lots of stuff with my mom, and I think that that's just super important, and it's comforting to have mom around.
That was a big lesson learned from Luther, because my brother has type 1 diagnosed as an adult. And you know, when Luther happened, I told everyone in my family that we need to be educated. So both of my parents have helped out on all the Divabetic live events. I brought my mother onto the podcast, but even my 2 other brothers have been involved in Divabetic outreach events. My sister-in-law became a certified diabetes educator. So, and my nieces and nephew have also been involved, so that we're all aware of how to help my brother. But, you know, like you said, for some people it's very personal, and everyone has their own way of dealing with it. It's not so much about let everyone in and know all your inner business, as much as just making sure people around you can kind of form a safe, soft circle and be there in case something happens. That, you know, we're not scratching our heads, but we're kind of more empowered on how to do that. Now, I thought if you can't walk the talk, then no one's listening.
Yep. I think leading by example is the only way that you're ever going to get anyone to really follow you. And I believe that so wholeheartedly, that that's the reason why, you know, I used to be 200 pounds and have a binge eating disorder. And it took me years and years and years of self-development and personal development to get through that. But, you know, one of the things that keeps me going today, one of the biggest things, is that if I want to have the ability to help other people, and I want people to actually listen to what I'm saying, I have to do those things. I can't just say, oh, go do this, and then, you know, go do something else. So I totally agree with you. Empowerment, leading by example, like, as you say, talk the talk and walk the walk. I think that is just essential to good leadership in any way, and having people that need you, that actually are out there needing you, wanting to listen to what you have to say. So that's awesome. So yeah, so I love talking to you, and I keep talking to you, but let's get to what Max is. So obviously you've been involved with lots of different people from all different walks of life, all different kinds of diabetes. What have you found over your years of experience to be what you have perceived to be the top 3 tips for thriving with diabetes, in your opinion?
Well, I just finished our 2nd annual Diabetes Mystery Murder. It's a podcast. It's called Phantom of the Okra. Asher Brown's on it, Sally, and Susan Weiner. So, you know, that I came up with 3 new ones for you guys because I was excited about the show. And I think there's something so interesting about being a diabetes detective. So my tips are related to being a diabetes detective. And, you know, I think it's time to push away the excuses and start looking for the explanations. That's what a detective does. So my tips were to, first of all, search for clues. And we're specifically right now, we're talking about what happens when something goes wrong when you think you're doing everything right. So an unexpected high or low blood sugar. I think a lot of people don't need to start investigating. Maybe that's a good way to look at it. Investigate what that's about. Start looking for clues about what were you doing before that reading happened. What were you eating? What were you thinking? Were you fighting with your mom? Were you breaking up with your boyfriend? Was your husband divorcing you? What, did your son lose his homework? Then start looking for patterns. Is this something that happens routinely? Is every Tuesday in the middle of the day suddenly when you find yourself going low for no unexpected reason? Is it every time you get off the phone with your mom and she's just kind of whine to you? Does that kind of drop your blood sugars? Or, when you work out, do you find that you go high or low? And maybe you could see some patterns right there. And then take that information, like if you were on a murder investigation, and go to the authorities. And for us, the authorities would be our healthcare provider. So you take the clues, you take the patterns, and you go back to your healthcare provider and you present the case. And then once you figure out a solution, you celebrate finding that solution. And it goes back to what you said about pampering. I don't think we take enough time in the journey of living with diabetes day in and day out to celebrate or reward ourselves in a positive way for just trying to do just that. Investigating, like Murder, She Wrote or Clouseau or some of these Charlie's Angels of Outreach, they make it all glamorous. And I know at times it's not glamorous when something unexpected happens when you're trying your best. But I think sometimes it's kind of fun to put on the personality of one of your favorite 007, one of your favorite popular detectives, and attack it that way. And I think if you do that, whoever's watching this, I think it could help out a lot. So I hope that helps. I hope people know that attitude is everything. That's always the first thing we say at Divabetic. You have to have a great attitude. And you said repeatedly today about not being alone. And every time we have a Divabetic outreach event, someone says to us, I don't feel alone anymore. And I think that's a big deal. So probably the #1 tip is just watching the show, knowing that there's people like you and me out there who are willing to help.
Absolutely. I love the whole diabetes detective thing. I'm definitely going to quote you on that. And I love that because that's what I teach, except I've never put it in those fun terms. I guess I'm a little bit more of a technical person, but I think that is so great. It's like you have to do the research, find the patterns. But if you put on that hat of, oh, I'm playing detective, like that's fun. And yeah, the diabetes community needs you, needs people like you to help us get out of our serious head. And, even though it is a serious thing, and just be able to put a playful spin on it. I love it so much. So thank you so much for taking the time. Now, before we wrap up, is there anything else that you want to share? Like I said, you'll tell me all your links and we'll post everything any way that anybody can follow you. We'll have that all available. But anything else you'd like to share with the community before we wrap up here?
Well, right now we're in the middle of 31 days of counting carbs on our Facebook page. So if you've never counted a carb or thought about counting a carb, we're posting the carb amounts of of nature's candy all month long. So your favorite fruits and vegetables, because we know at the end of the month there's a big candy holiday. So before you get ready for that one, we're looking at what are the carb amounts on your favorite fruits and vegetables. I think today I posted about cabbage or strawberries. That's a hard thing to carb count because a lot of people look at things with processed food. It comes in a bag and you can see the amounts. But when it comes to like buying fresh, which we both probably encourage people to eat, you kind of need to have some resources there to show you. So if you could catch up on that. Every day we're posting it on Facebook, but you could go back and look at all the other ones from the other days as well and just put that in your little detective notebook.
Yeah, I've been following. I like that. I think yesterday was green peppers and, I like watermelon. Yeah, no, I totally been looking at them every day. I love it. I recommend myfitnesspal.com, which is a website where you can put in, things like strawberries and things like that, and it'll give you, a half a cup like you've been doing, and you can get that. But, just use the resources that you have, whether it's going to your site, and checking out the Nature's Candy, which I love that as well, or just using a free online tool like myfitnesspal.com or even calorieking.com. You just, type it in, put it in, and just that way and you don't have to like start doing a ton of research. It's just like click, click, click. We have this amazing, endless resource of resources at our fingertips all the time. So just, take it.
Like you said earlier too about binge eating, part of this is I interviewed Migrit Fletcher from the Center of Mindful Eating, and a lot of planning ahead kind of breaks down your relationship with food and asking yourself, why am I eating right now? And if you take that time to go to any of the resources you just listed for carb counting, or if you visit Divabetic, wherever you choose to go to, I think that's wonderful, because it's already putting that idea of planning ahead into your head when you're thinking about eating. And I think for a lot of people, that probably is the most overwhelming moment of diabetes, is to think that I have to measure and cut and look at the numbers on everything I eat. And that just, people just want to lie down with that. But the truth is, like, you could take it on in some small chunks. And even if you're only referring to that number once, it's just the idea that you're getting more information about it to kind of change your relationship around something that, a lot of people use food for comfort. And then, as you know, I'm sure from your personal experience, that sometimes it could be a little bit more detrimental than helpful. And so it's important to kind of think of ways in which you could educate yourself around changing that relationship.
Absolutely. But like we said, to wrap it up, the first relationship you have to change is the one that you have with yourself. And you have to believe that you deserve that effort and that you're worth it, and that no matter where you are in your journey right now, you deserve to feel good, and you deserve to love yourself, and you deserve to feel all the joys that life has to offer. So that's where it starts. And I think everything else kind of just stems from that. So very cool. Thank you so much for joining me. And I can't wait to see you, I guess, in a few weeks at this point, because I'm definitely coming to the November 8th event. So I will see you there in person. Hopefully I'll bring my mom along with me. And I was going to say, so cool. So then I'll see you then. And thank you for joining us. And as everybody out there, we'll see you on the next episode. Give us a thumbs up if you liked it. And I hope you liked it, because I know I just had a really good time. So we'll catch you guys on the next episode. Take care.